Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Choose the CDN Provider in 2021. My name is Irina Lykova and I'm a CDN pre-sale engineer at GCore Labs. I'd like to introduce you today's speakers. Today we are joined by Shane Baldacchino. He's a technical leader and content producer at Amazon Web Services, and Svetlana Pakhalueva. She's CDN product manager at GCore Labs. I will briefly tell you about the companies that our speakers represent. GCore Labs is a global web services provider with cutting-edge features and advanced security. GCore Labs provides services for all modern web needs, like CDN, hosting, storage, streaming platform, security, and cloud. GCore Labs provides customers with a first-class cloud infrastructure for computing, storing, protecting, and delivering content with the delays up to 30 milliseconds worldwide. The second participant is Amazon Web Services, the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform, offering over 200 fully featured services from data centers globally. Millions of their customers, including the fastest growing startups, largest enterprises, and leading government agencies, are using Amazon to lower cost, become more agile, and of course, innovate faster. So today is going to be a really useful talk here. So please stay and prepare your questions. In case if you have any emergencies, don't worry, please. On Friday, we will send you a record of this event, but it's always better to be online. Also, after the webinar, I want to invite you to the after party where you'll be able to talk with our participants and speakers personally. The link to join will be sent to the chat at the end of the webinar. And let's start our event by diving into CDN trends in 2021 with our first speaker, Shane Baldacchino. Shane is the co-host of the Amazon podcast. He specializes in content delivery, cloud Amazon, infrastructure as a service, continuous delivery, and many, many more. Shane will be shedding light on CDN Trends 2021. Well, word to you, Shane, and we're ready to see your presentation.
All right, welcome everyone, and thanks for having me on this webinar, and thanks Irina for the introduction. So look, usually I would, normally call it a night at this time of day, but instead I'm, sipping on some coffee in a very dark room, and I'm thrilled to be joining you here today from the other side of the world in Melbourne, Australia. So by forms of introduction, my name is Shane Baldacchino. I'm an Edge specialist solution architect at Amazon Web Services. What this really means is I'm really fortunate to be able to work with many OTT and large web properties to get the best out of their edge compute and networking, and that includes CDN. So look, I've worn many hats from operations with CI/CD pipelines, as a developer in C#, storage engineer, and as mentioned, I'm the host of the AWS Tech Chat podcast. But today, I want to talk to you about CDN trends without any of the marketing fluff and, really tell it as it is. So look, I may wear an Amazon hat, but this is a vendor agnostic session. And I'm going to talk to you about what trends are important for you, the budding developer and architect. So it's 2021, let's talk CDNs. So in 2021, a CDN needs to be more than a CDN. Businesses are going global today. The humble CDN is one of those key ingredients for a successful online presence. But in 2021, that expectation of what a CDN does is far different to what a CDN did, say, 5 years ago, let alone 2 years ago. It's a moving baseline that both the industry and the development and architect personas need to acknowledge. So to repeat, a CDN needs to be more than a CDN. And I think that's a good place to start today by level setting, what a CDN or content delivery network is, just to ensure that we're all on the same page before I continue. So look, at its core, a content delivery network is a geographically distributed network of proxy servers with the aim of providing, a few goals. Firstly, we want to provide high availability. Secondly, we want to increase performance by distributing the service spatially relative to the end users, and equally as important, we want to remove load off the origin. So to me, that's in essence what a CDN is. But that humble CDN has morphed into a lot more. A CDN now being really an umbrella term spanning different types of content delivery services. So, it could be video streaming, it could be object caching, load balancing, application performance monitoring, with, crossover capabilities into other industry disciplines, such as security in the forms of layer 7 protection. There's also DDoS protection, WAN optimization, and even compute at the edge. On the security front, the CDN is the first layer of defense at the perimeter, and it's used as an instrument to provide, at arm's length access to the origin. By not allowing direct access to the origin, the CDN is reducing your surface attack area of your application, and that's really important from a security posture perspective. Now, all of this adds up, as I mentioned, to more than just a basic CDN. So today, these features that I've just mentioned, they aren't a nice to have. It is really a ticket to entry or a ticket to play for industry players in this CDN market. Now, I just mentioned compute on the edge. Of all the themes I want to emphasize today, it's about compute and data at the edge. What we are seeing every day in speaking with customers are new sets of low latency use cases that are emerging, increasing demand on edge computing. Now, as I mentioned, that basic function of a CDN is a given, but with websites being, very dynamic and rich, edge computing has a big part to play today. So basically, we're seeing more cases where users want to run their code closer, to their end users and have their application perform their logic and decisioning at the edge. Now, this improves performance and it's going to reduce latency. And I think equally as important, it does it in a way that reduces the operational burden of, managing servers and having the CDN perform and execute this code in a global sense, closer to the end user, and gives you, the developer, the architect, the ability to run your code at scale. Now, compute at edge really means, no servers or containers to patch, configure, manage, and it plays a part in reducing that operational overhead for the organization. Meaning, companies can do more with less, have their staff focus on high value tasks, such as maybe like delivering features versus low value tasks, such as patching a hypervisor. So on the compute side, common use cases are cropping up, from simple HTTP manipulations like normalizing a user agent to increase a cache hit ratio, or adding security headers to increase your SSL score. Things also like on the dynamic content generation, where you might replace part of your origin with compute on the CDN side. So you might do things like image manipulation on the fly. You could render pages dynamically using, say, a template on a service like Amazon S3, an object store, and use a payload from a JSON payload from a NoSQL database such as Dynamo. And I could go on. But this is basically becoming incredibly important for all sorts of industries, from those who just object serve images to those that want to do header injection or rewrites at the edge, through to media companies, performing HMAC validation or forms of, DRM using geolocation headers. So we are seeing CDN providers from us at Amazon through to our competitors absolutely intensifying their efforts to open up their edge locations for developers with serverless compute, open APIs, JavaScripting, and this is driving change in how architects and developers continue to provide that richer end user experience. The programmability of the edge, in the CDN is evolving to become that differentiator between those CDNs that possess this feature and those, those more traditional ones that don't. And as development teams modernize and adopt more modern approaches, the focus on the end user experience is a key ingredient on why they need the modern CDN and not one of yesteryear. Now, equally as important and complementary to compute at the edge, it's no good having that compute to end users if the compute needs to access a data store, at the origin. So coupling compute and data together is a theme here. So from read-only key value stores, maybe you could look up values for perhaps redirects or the ability to load in a library for image manipulation. This dynamic content is an absolute must via data at the edge. And both of these technologies are helping enrich modern applications, and they really are changing that paradigm in edge computing and CDNs today. So I've spoken much about the changes on the CDN front, but there's also change on the software stack. These protocols, as per the theme here of edge computing, play an equally important part in enabling that richer experience. They can reduce latency. They can provide better compression, which provides a larger window for you to transmit your data. So we've got a bigger window now, and we've got better codecs, and we can couple this with faster links, and it's ushering in a totally new user experience. Specifically, TLS 1.3 continues to gain adoption. It's faster, safer, and it's just awesome. The transition of browsers in the fullness of time to newer versions means TLS 1.3 is now commonplace, with browsers, I guess, around that circa 2019 providing support for this new TLS version. Now, the handshake in TLS has largely remained unchanged since TLS was standardized in 1999. Now, that handshake requires 2 additional round trips between the browser and the CDN before an encrypted data can be sent. Now, TLS 1.3 changes all of this. It saves a full round trip, and if your edge location of your CDN is, say, 50 milliseconds away, that's 100 milliseconds round trip that your end users are saving. And we all know that speed matters, having impacts on performance through to the cost of keywords on platforms like Google Analytics. On the media side, high efficiency video coding, also known as H.265, which carries a torch from advanced video coding, or AVC H.264, provides between 25 and 50% better data compression at the same level of video quality, or substantially improve video quality at the same bitrate, whilst supporting resolutions up to 8K. Now, whilst codecs like HVEC are CDN agnostic, protocols like TLS 1.3, which I just mentioned, and Brotli are being introduced into CDNs and speeding up websites by either reducing the time it takes to establish a connection or reduce the time to send bits down the wire with protocols like Brotli. But this all comes back to browser support policies in many organizations. And as many of these protocols have only been supported by browsers for 3 or so years, there may not be 100% penetration as yet. But in the fullness of time, these protocols are driving the web forward and making the web a more secure and performant place. On the security side, also protocols and cipher deprecation continue to be a theme, with CDNs auto-negotiating to high levels of security and ciphers whilst deprecating older versions. Now, COVID-19, it's absolutely impacted many industries. And it comes at no surprise, it has had an impact on CDNs. There's been a significant upward tick on CDN traffic due to the shift in remote working, learning, and even leisure. Most CDN providers are experiencing a 30% plus increase in traffic during the peak months of COVID-19, due to, I guess, a demand for on-demand video streaming and gaming downloads. I know my kids, as an example, are absolutely spending a lot more time, either streaming content, gaming, and so on. And we're seeing that worldwide. Traffic has increased, in e-commerce, home delivery services, and so on. Now, the adoption of CDN services, which was already increasing prior to COVID, has risen exponentially, with people consuming more content at home, working from home, and shopping online. CDNs have proven their resilience, though, in this presence here. So they're responding to the impact of COVID-19. And I think really importantly, they're shielding the origins from much of these heavy lifting, that load that these services are now having to serve. And it's these architectural underpinnings of a CDN with, their massively distributed caching, all around the world here, supported with content acceleration, that is allowing us, in the CDN industry to respond to these unforeseen peak traffic demands. So to summarize the effects of COVID on CDN, it's driven a significant increase in CDN usage, and more so, it's helped businesses recognize, that high-performing digital experiences are absolutely key to any company's ability to respond to a pandemic. And given this increase in traffic profiles, CDN providers are working at a faster clip to meet the requirements of these next generation workloads. So just like serverless compute and data at the edge I mentioned earlier, CDNs will increasingly become more relevant to the everyday operation of the modern digital enterprise. Now, closely aligned here to COVID is OTT. So over-the-top video, these OTT video streaming is the largest segment of CDN. Now, it represents on-demand and live videos. And COVID-19 has absolutely driven significant growth for on-demand video, but in a way, it's negatively impacted live video due to cancellation of many events around the world. But also, the world is transitioning from terrestrial and RF transmission models into either IP or these new OTT entrants. These OTT entrants are bringing a new breed of virtual multi-channel video programs that are distributed far and wide over the public internet with no investment in network infrastructure. How amazing is that? Network providers do not need to spend millions of dollars building a distribution model. They now have a CDN. And these OTT players are also distributing their own original content, resulting in a shift of revenue from the incumbents to these OTT players. It's definitely a theme that we are seeing on a global scale. But in another theme here, in this model, TV stations worldwide are transitioning over to IP. So the digitization of TV, the proliferation of broadband and the growing importance of IP technology are disrupting, the traditional TV broadcast model. OTT growth is outpacing broadcast TV around the world. People are streaming a lot more. And you've got several content providers that are launching video services, and we've seen many in the last year, from Disney Plus, HBO Max, ESPN, Apple TV, and so on. And then couple this with the next generation of consoles that just launched from Microsoft and Sony that have put larger requirements, I should say, on the network as they embrace NVMe storage, super fast storage. IO is no longer a problem, so the bottleneck becomes the network. And these games are measured in the hundreds of gigabytes in size. But it also then comes with challenges. It's that chicken and egg scenario. How does the last mile scale? It's all well and good for CDNs to cope, but what about ISPs? Is there enough bandwidth to deliver that 4K or even 8K content or that latest, AAA game? So signals are being sent from the industry, but in some parts of the world where infrastructure lacks behind, the ability to get that 25 megabit link, say for a 4K stream, just doesn't exist. And that comes back to codecs, being able to dynamically provide the best viewing experience based on the available bandwidth. But overall, in the fullness of time, resolutions are going up, bandwidth full stack is increasing, and OTT video is dominating more of the CDN traffic space. And lastly, look, multi-CDN. And from an industry point of view, the reality is, multi-CDN is a thing. Probably not what vendors like to hear, like my sales counterparts. But the reality is, as OTT and CDN become more important and software stacks mature and advance, multi-CDN, it's all about hedging bets. It's about reducing your risk. So for a large media company serving video, and even those who serve objects, a multi-CDN architecture is highly desired, not only from, a price competitive point of view, but more so from an availability and performance perspective. It's around diluting that risk profile. This, though, comes with challenges and opportunities around interoperability across CDNs, especially when you're talking multi-CDN environments. If you embrace 2 or 3 different CDN providers, are you diluting the feature set to the lowest common denominator across all 3 in your organization? Does it mean you use your origin for higher functions like JWT or auth or HMAC validation? These are all questions you need to ask yourself. I think the good news here is, whilst this is not standardized amongst the big players, edge computing allows you to have a toe in each camp. You've got open APIs, you've got JavaScript engines, you've got the ability to allow you to execute your code at the edge, which means the same can be achieved on many of the players in the market. So multi-CDN, its usage is increasing, and it's increasing year on year, especially among startups. So enterprise, mid-market, and small business have increased their multi-CDN usage by single-digit percentages, but startups increase their multi-CDN vendor approach by around 27%. And that includes a lot of the OTT players in the market. Now, cloud technology and that software first approach that many startups have are making multi-CDN a reality, meaning their needs for availability and redundancy increase. Having multiple CDNs allows organizations to load balance, and it ticks that box for risk mitigation. So wrapping it up here. So as I wrap up my session, let me quickly summarize the key points we covered. So the trends that we are seeing as an industry are, CDNs are always evolving. What was once a humble CDN just doesn't cut it in 2021. The growth of feature sets is reaching an all-time high in velocity. Compute and data at the edge continue to enrich the modern application. And really, they are changing the paradigm in edge computing and CDNs today. Protocol and codec evolution is allowing you to do more with less, whilst making the web a more secure place. COVID has seen a global uptick in demand. There is a slew of new OTT players hitting the market. Coupled with next generation consoles, it's causing increased levels of demand, but can that last mile cope? Before ending today with multi-CDN, with organizations hedging their bets. So look, thank you for having myself today, and I look forward to joining you shortly in our fireside chat. I'll hand this over back to Irina and Svetlana. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. It was very insightful speech. Now we know everything about CDN trends in 2021 and understand where the service is aiming. Dear listeners, I would also like to remind you not to forget to ask questions in our chat. We will discuss them during our questions and our session a bit later. And don't forget about our after party, where you will be able to discuss all your questions directly with our speakers. So our next speaker is Svetlana Pakhalueva. She's CDN product owner at GK Labs. Svetlana has more than 5 years of experience in the CDN industry and more than 8 years of experience in IT. Svetlana will give us some insights on how to choose the CDN provider in 2021. And also she will provide an overview of 8 important criteria and technologies. Svetlana, the floor is yours, and we're ready to see your presentation. Svetlana, you're muted. Please, can you activate your mic?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Irina, for presenting me. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Shane, for your wonderful presentation. And today, I will tell you how to choose a CDN provider in 2021. But before I start, let me introduce our company in some numbers. We have more than 80 points of presence at 5 continents, 50 terabits per second network capacity, less than 30 milliseconds average response time worldwide, and 3,500 happy customers. So let's move to our 8 criteria how to choose a CDN provider in 2021. And the first criterion is quite obvious, is coverage in the countries where your customers live. So yes, it's quite obvious, but yes, it's still important. Look at providers' websites and choose provider who has POPs located closer to your customers. And if you have customers worldwide, then choose CDNs who has globally developed infrastructure. But of course, number of POPs doesn't mean minimal response time. It's also important to take in mind how many number of peering partners do your operator have, and also check CDN providers with advanced balancing mechanism. You can use independent tools like CDN-PEF or Citrix to check how your provider is compared to any other providers, their latency, and some providers even publish this information at their websites or in their blogs. Of course, any modern project can experience dramatic growth of their users, and you should be prepared for high loads. For example, it can be like Black Friday or some important football match. Everything can happen, and you should be prepared. So choose CDN provider with high quality and high capacity network. You also can use additional features like origin shielding or cache sharing, and these features protect your origin from additional load during such peaks. In today's world, nobody wants to set up service long and boring. Everyone wants just to sign up and start up service without contact support team or managers. So choose that your provider has convenient control panel, and control panel has all necessary guides and tips, so you can do everything yourself. Check if API and other documentation is available too. Of course, all modern web projects are unique. So your modern CDN provider should have all necessary features, such as protection features, broadly compression, different caching settings, all modern protocols. These features are a must in today's world, so your provider should support it. When you contact technical support, be sure that their response time is fine for you. They have deep knowledge and expertise in their products. Check channel communications which they provide and how polite they are, because one day you will have some question and you should be sure that they will answer you. And of course, in the emergency, they should provide fast and professional support. You might think that CDN is expensive, but in most cases, no. CDN saves you time, money, and you will spend even more if you want to create your own infrastructure and then support it. But you can save even more if you follow several tips. For example, some CDNs have free plans for individual projects and also provide startup plans. If you have high volume project, you can ask for special price for the enterprise companies, and you also can follow the provider to find promos and discounts. Use different services like CDN Planet, CDN Overview, or any other comparison services to compare features and pricing and find the best CDN provider for you. And the final criterion, but of course not the least, CDN is not enough. Even if today you don't need other services, look at the companies who provide different services in the same control panel. You will definitely need some services one day, and you will save your time because you will not need to contact customer support to get acquainted with new control panel, with new managers. You don't need to sign new contract, so it will be easier and faster to you. And in conclusion, I would like to demolish several myths about CDN. Some people think the more POPs CDN have, the better. Of course, no, the latency matters more. Latency depends not only on number of POPs, but also on different criteria like different operators and balancing mechanisms. So check latency first, but not number of POPs. Never judge CDN by just one example file load. Because CDN chooses the best route exactly for this time of the day and this network load, you need to give some traffic before judging a CDN. Don't forget to check cache hit ratio. Cache hit ratio should be more than 80%. And of course, check the what is included in the pricing, because pricing can differ. Different CDN providers has different additional options and different plan limitations, so it can be important. Well, thank you for listening me. We prepared a special promo for you who joins this webinar. After this webinar, you will get an email and you will be able to have 2 CDN, 2 months of free CDN and 1 petabyte. It will be free. So I will be happy to answer your questions in the fireside chat after this, my speech.
Thank you, Svetlana. Thank you very much. It was very interesting and practical. I'm sure this information will help our listeners to make a proper decision while choosing the best CDN provider. And again, I'd like to remind our audience to ask questions in the chat because we can't wait to answer them. I think now Svetlana and Shane should join me. Thanks a lot, Shane and Svetlana, for your presentations. It's great to be speaking with you, all of you today. And now it looks like we're ready to move on the next section, fireside chat with our speakers. So, and I see we have a couple of questions in our chat, so it's time to answer them. So the first question is, how important is the global coverage of a CDN provider? So what do you think? What is your opinion, guys?
Well, look, I'll probably echo the sentiments of Svetlana before. I think businesses are going global. You know, their audience today may be all over the world. So I think the reality is, unless your user base is confined to one local geography, which in that case, you know, a CDN is probably not going to be that effective anyway. The answer is yes. You know, it is important to have global coverage here. And I think, you know, to make that one better, having your own global network can also help amplify or, you know, increase the importance of this. For example, you know, like just as an example with Amazon CloudFront, you know, there's peering with thousands of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 telco carriers, but we also have our own private network, which we can backhaul our traffic. You know, but to the point that Svetlana made before, you know, customers need to do their due diligence around testing. You know, you want to be able to understand the performance characteristics. So look, it is absolutely important for customers, for CDN providers to have global coverage here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, global coverage is important today for any kind of company. For multinational and big companies, it's quite obvious. They have customers worldwide, and these customers want to get content fast. And when these companies want to enter new markets, they don't want to think about infrastructure. They won't just think about their business and how they will scale their business, but not infrastructure. And if a CDN provider can help them with entering new markets by supporting them in these countries, so it can be really important for them. And I also had another case when we have a customer whose clients are on just one market, but they need global coverage because their customers travel a lot around the world and they want to get this service at the same quality. So today, global coverage seems like a must criteria for all CDNs.
Yeah, and I think the point that you just mentioned there around, you know, entering new markets, I think particularly for the OTT players out there, you know, the cost is simply not tenable. The cost to build your own global network makes the barriers to entry really high. So for example, if you look at Netflix, you know, and the many streaming players out there, they don't have their own network. They're able to enter the likes of Australia or, you know, other regions of the world without building their own global footprint, you know, to rely on public CDNs. And what this also means is, the cost of failure is considerably lower, allowing for innovation. So organizations can try things, much faster, much quicker by leveraging a CDN at, a really, I guess, small investment.
Okay, thank you guys for your answers. And the next question is about streaming. I think Shane already told us about it, but maybe we can clarify the basic things. So, and the question is, do we need a CDN for streaming?
Yeah, for sure. Video content is really sensitive to latency, and here CDN can help with this because it can help to deliver streaming fast with minimum delay, which is really crucial in today's world. And a special case, and sometimes streaming has a peaks in number of viewers. And in this case, CDN just will reroute this traffic easily, and the service will continue working. Customers will be happy. So yes, of course, streaming needs CDN.
Yeah. And I think, just as you just mentioned there, Svetlana, request collapsing. So really important for live streaming where there could be tens of, I guess, thousands of requests flowing through an edge location around the world. So, we really want to ensure that these segments don't have to be uniquely fetched from the origin. So if you've got all these requests arriving in at the same time, they'll be collapsed together and then pulled in one fetch from the origin. So, that in this scenario here, the CDN is going to ensure that this content, in the use case of the video stream, is going to be delivered with minimal delay. And look, also that was mentioned earlier in Svetlana's session, it's about origin shielding. So a CDN can really come into play here. Applications often need to deal with traffic spikes during peak periods of activity. It could be a live sporting event. So using a form of, I guess, shield to further reduce the load on the origin. So look, case in point, Amazon's got one called, CloudFront Origin Shield that provides, I guess, another caching layer. So you don't have all of your edge locations uniquely going back to the origin. It goes through an intermediary tier. Now, why this is really important for streaming these origin shields is it helps increase the availability of your application. Because for some scenarios, the cost on the origin could be really huge. Perhaps it could be a mainframe or a system that doesn't scale well, horizontally in an automatic manner. So, it's really important there. And again, that was pointed out for streaming. It's about cost. CDN will, in almost all cases, be cheaper to deliver content to end users than if it's served from the origin. So let alone you're reducing the load, which again is reducing your cost because you're not having to pay to serve so much content from your origin. You're reducing latency and you're reducing the cost in bandwidth that you're having to pay your provider. So, yes, CDNs are really important for streaming.
Okay, thank you. Now it's more than clear, I think, about the streaming and CDN. So the next question is multi-CDN. What is the best multi-CDN strategies? Publishing it to all CDNs, or there are other methods show CDN handle it? So who wanted to be the first? What do you think about multi-CDN? How it can be configured in a proper way, maybe?
Okay, so look, I'll give this one a crack. Look, as I mentioned, it's about hedging your bet and minimizing risk. Particularly if you're a media player, can you afford, if you're a streaming company, can you afford for your CDN to be offline? And when I say offline, it could be from human error. So, I think we've all worked with customers before who have misconfigured and caused an issue on their side, which has brought their CDN configuration offline. Or it could be an issue on the provider's side. So multi-CDN, it is absolutely a thing these days. And I think whilst every vendor would like 100% of the traffic, just like a website or a hosting provider with diverse, carriers and paths to mitigate the risk of failure, multi-CDN is absolutely a trend. It's about, could be around cost reduction. It could be around increasing resiliency. And there are approaches to do that from, DNS. So from altering the fully qualified domain name in the connection string of your application through to defining, I guess, a CDN endpoint in code on a specific application. There are challenges here in these approaches from time to live when you're using DNS and so on. But I think, it's becoming more and more popular, the whole multi-CDN trend these days. And edge computing is playing a big part to allow a lot of the same functionality to be able to be performed on different CDN providers.
Okay, thank you. And Svetlana, maybe you can share.
Yeah, Shane covered this topic so much. But yeah, I agree with fault tolerance and fault resistance. Of course, it's important for some companies. It's even some of them have regulations to have a kind of multi-CDN solution. Yeah. So they cannot have just one CDN because their business, they cannot lose even a minute or even a second. They have to use several CDNs. And of course, if you use a multi-CDN solution, you have the best coverage and the best performance possible because you choose what coverage you need, what performance you need, because you can balance between CDNs. And of course, you can reduce costs because, again, you can choose the cheapest CDN at this market. But on the other hand, it can be a little bit tricky to settle it up. Of course, there are some multi-CDN solutions when you sign up and get multi-CDN in one control panel. But I think they're a little bit limited in functionality because they have to match different CDNs in one control panel. And of course, they cannot give you so much features which you can get from different CDNs yourselves. And yes, you can use yourselves different DNS services, like we launched the same service previous year, and you can use it. You can balance your traffic by geography, by percentage, and it gives you flexibility in settings. You can do it the way you like, but it may require some skills in setting it up. Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely adding, that extra layer of complexity into your application. But it's a trade-off, right? Like that extra complexity, but you are reducing risk of an outage, of downtime, etc.
And what do you think? What is better to use multi-CDN, one company who will set up everything for you, or it's better to choose by yourself, to find your own provider and to make all the DNS settings by yourself?
I'll let you take that one, Svetlana.
Well, I think there is no right answer here because it depends on the needs and on skills, on anything. Of course, it's easier to have just one multi-CDN solution. As I said, you just sign up and you get everything with one vendor. You have just one contract, and yeah, it can be easier. But you can get not such rich functionality. And for some companies, it's important. Moreover, some companies want to set up everything themselves. It's also important for them. I met such clients who needed everything to make everything themselves, to know how they can change all settings. For them, it's just important by some internal regulation or whatever, I don't know. So there is no right answer. Sorry, here. Everyone can choose the best.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move to the next question. And it is how Amazon and Juko Labs manage concurrency for, say, 5 million users in case there is a constraint that traffic cannot move out to other regions.
All right, lots to unpack there. So how do we manage concurrency for, say, 5 million users? So look, if you think about a CDN, you've got edge locations scattered around the world. Let's assume for this question here, maybe there's 5 million users coming through one edge location, highly unlikely given that, we've got hundreds of edge locations scattered all around the world. But just to make this, I guess, that worst case scenario, maybe there's 5 million users going through one edge location. So look, from our perspective here, we monitor the capacity, obviously, of our edge locations. And look, if there is not enough capacity, we will route end users to the nearest edge location. So we have edge locations scattered, usually most capital cities are around the world. If our local edge location is out of capacity, my request will go to, will be routed to an edge location nearby that has capacity. It's really as simple as that, using, in most cases, standard routing protocols like BGP, coupled with, different DNS responses, as well as, I guess, some, internal routing logic that I guess is, proprietary to Amazon Web Services.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for answering. Svetlana, what do you think?
Well, I think it's the same. We use a mechanism to distribute this traffic among all POPs available in this region. And it's again internal mechanism which do it, some internal logic which helps to reload this balance. And yeah, we can sustain it and use all possible POPs to develop this traffic.
Yeah. So I think in these scenarios, from a CDN perspective, we don't want to send all the traffic to the closest POP if it doesn't have any capacity. We'd prefer to send it 50 milliseconds, up the road to a different edge location, to a different POP that's got lots of capacity. So we'll take that hit on the initial, I guess, request to the CDN, to go further away if it has available capacity. So, as Svetlana said, it's about that internal, I guess, routing mechanisms that most CDNs have to be able to shift traffic.
Okay, thank you, guys. So the next question is about criteria. We discussed a lot, but people want to know what is the single criteria to pick a CDN provider? Could it be performance?
I think that really depends. What's important to your organization? Are you after the cheapest CDN? Are you after the most functional CDN? Are you after the most performant CDN? And I think it really depends. And it also depends on, I guess, the ecosystem that you're in. For example, Amazon Web Services used by tens of millions of organizations around the world. Customers who host on AWS get free data transfer out when they use our CDN between their computing resources and the CDN. So, I think there are a lot of dimensions here. I think it can come back to functionality. It can come back to cost. It can come back to what you're comfortable operating with. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. And I think this is unique to, each individual customer.
Okay. So it's just important to fit the needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because yes, different customers need different things. Some customers need performance, some customers need features, some customers need exact feature. And it really depends on the customer, on the demands, on needs, on what they want to achieve in the result. And I think all customers should choose CDN for exactly their needs. Just put a list of it and find the CDN which will be absolutely comfortable for them.
Okay, thank you, guys. Yes, now it's clear now. And the next question is, how do collabs handle last mile delivery? Maybe Sveta can be the first, and Shane will also share his opinion about Amazon.
Well, again, we have different mechanisms and different things and different monitoring system, how we reroute and how we balance and how we choose our providers. So, and it depends. It's quite complicated and internal system. And I'm not sure what exactly I can say here.
Okay, thank you. Shane, maybe you have something to add?
Look, from a last mile, I'm going to take that in the context of the end user making a request to an object at the edge. And look, I think for us at AWS, when a request is made to a CloudFront, Amazon CloudFront distribution, we return the IP address of the edge location that is the closest based on available capacity, etc. And that is done via a combination of Amazon Route 53, our globally available DNS service, and I guess some in-house logic. But effectively, when you say how do we handle the last mile, our DNS platform coupled with Amazon CloudFront will ensure that end users connect to the most appropriate edge location closest to them. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thanks. So the next is, what is Decore Labs' value proposition? How Decore Labs solution differentiate from other CDN vendors?
Well, it again depends on what exactly is needed, because in general, most CDN providers are the same, but of course, everyone has something specific, something which differs them. But actually, it's mostly for a special customer. So it's for some customers, for example, they prefer Russia, coverage in Russia and or other countries where we have really perfect performance, or some customers need special features which we have. Some customers request for special customer support which we can provide. So it also depends, and all CDN providers are really fantastic. And again, you can just choose what is really comfortable for you.
Okay, thank you, Sveta. Shane, maybe you also want to add about Amazon.
All right. So how does Amazon differentiate? Well, look, firstly, I wouldn't say it's a differentiation. Obviously, there's that global coverage model. But one thing how we do differentiate is we provide free data egress between the origin and Amazon CloudFront if the origin is in AWS. And that can be substantial to a lot of customers. So if the origin is hosted in AWS, we will not charge a data egress fee between the origin and CloudFront. And, I guess, as you introduced Amazon before, Amazon Web Services, 200 plus services, there is that tight-knit integration. So, if you want to get metrics from Amazon CloudFront through to another AWS service, there's that developer first, builder centric model within AWS. Everything is configured as code. So if you're an organization that is leveraging infrastructure as code, you are checking your configuration into source control rather than using a control panel, etc. AWS with Amazon CloudFront is a fantastic product in this sense, because it enables you to codify and version your CDN configuration, be it from doing things like rewriting at the edge with Lambda at Edge, our serverless compute platform, through to defining your CloudFront distribution, your CDN configuration. All of that can be codified and stored in your source control. So realistically, it's the data egress between Origin and CloudFront, and it's that developer first, I guess, approach coupled with the tighter integration between CloudFront and the AWS ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. We get your point. So the next question is about Italy and the performance of Decore Labs there. In Italy, does Decore Labs use direct peering with ISPs or internet transit?
Well, it's a little bit complicated question, and I will explain why. Yeah, we have several POPs in Italy, but we are opening new POPs almost every week. And now I don't exactly remember what peering partners we have in Italy, but yes, we can check this information, and we have this information on our website, so you can check it too.
Okay, thank you, Sveta. And another one question about Decore Labs. What integration support Decore Labs provide?
Well, the question a little bit ambiguous because it's not clear what exact integrations are meant, but we have integrations with different CMS systems, so you can easily use our service if you have systems like WordPress or something like this. We have integration with our products, so we have like one ecosystem which we can use. Everything is one control panel. It's quite easy to start up all the services. And now we're developing several plugins which will help you to use our services even faster and to use our infrastructure as a code.
Okay, thank you. Maybe it will be interesting to discuss regions if we're talking about Italy. What global regions can be distinguished today as fast-growing regions?
Well, according to some researchers, I see that emerging markets are developing now, like markets like Asia, like Latin America, India, and so on. And I also see a demand from our customers for these regions. And that is why, and I see the same, that different CDN providers are also opening POPs here. So I think predictions will happen soon, and these markets will blow off all markets. So yeah, here's the markets.
Thank you, Svetlana. Shane, what do you think? What is the regions are the most growing now?
Very similar to what Svetlana just mentioned. Look, we're seeing growth everywhere, but mainly in EMEA, in the APAC regions. But then again, we're starting from a lot smaller base than, say, parts of North America. So I guess it is relative here. But look, absolutely there is growth in, EMEA and, in some of the Asian regions.
Okay, thank you. Let me check the questions. Do we have more? I think maybe that was the last one. Yeah, okay. I'm sure that if someone wants to ask something, they can join us in the after party. So this was the last question, and the official part of our webinar is over. I want to say a huge thanks to our amazing speakers, Shane and Svetlana, and thank you all for coming today. And dear listeners, tomorrow you'll receive an email with a record of the webinar and speakers' presentations. Also, there will be a link to a form with questions about our webinars, and we will be happy if you leave us a feedback about this event. Well, I think for now we don't say goodbye to you, as we want to invite you to our after party, all of you in Meet. If you didn't manage to ask something, please join us and follow the link. You have an ability to speak personally with our speakers. And see you there.